Konigssee, a natural lake in the extreme southeast district of the German state of Bavaria. We're pretty close to the Austrian border in the Berchtesgaden National Park, and nestled on the side of the Watzmann, the third highest mountain in Germany, is this historic track in Konigssee, the oldest artificially refrigerated track in the world. Warm conditions for today's World Championship team relay competition, as the temperature is now hovering near 40 degrees. The rain and snow have stopped. That's good news for fair sliding. As we take a closer look at the dynamics and the details of this track, right now we'll give you a little tour and a ride from top to bottom as I bring into the call former USA Olympic athlete and junior world champion Kate Hansen. Kate, welcome back.
Yeah, this track is a special one. It requires all the skill sets to get down it. And the the relay is a little different because the men will have to come down in the start. And so all of the athletes will be starting from the same place in the track. So it'll be a little slower for the men, but the same start for the doubles and the women. But right here, one of the more important transitions is here, 360-degree turn, Kreisel into the chicane. This area flirts with danger every time. It's a quick little left and right curve. Athletes really have to pin their shoulders back and stay calm and relaxed and not oversteer there. A lot of times athletes can steer themselves into trouble, but again, right here as they come up towards the end of the track with that uphill, they really just have to stay relaxed for that good time.
It's one of the athletes' favorite tracks in the world. If you took a poll, it would be the clear winner. As we look at the start list, USA will lead off that second group after the first 5 nations come. We expect the medals will come from 6 through 11, with Latvia, Austria, Russia, and Germany so far dominating these world championships. Those 4 nations have captured all of the podium positions. We open things up now with Romania. They'll be the first to go. Raluca Strămăcuraru, the veteran athlete in today's competition, at least for the women, at 35 years old. Raluca will be joined by Vali Cretu and the doubles team of Jutland and Serban. Raluca, a last-minute prayer, puts that shield down, and she'll be off and running.
While the 2 single sliders from Romania, they're more veterans on the circuit. The doubles team is younger. Romania, they tend to put down really clean runs, so I expect this to go really well for Romania. Shouldn't be any surprises for them.
Raluca, last year, with Natalie Geisenberger and Diana Eitberger on maternity leave, she was actually the highest placing active athlete in terms of Olympic results for the women. She finished 7th in Pyeongchang, which was an incredible finish for Romania.
Yeah, that really is an incredible finish, and she probably was welcomed home off the plane with this major celebration. And it's so important to get diversity in this sport, different countries involved, especially when it's so geographically favored. I mean, they're always in Germany training. There's no tracks in Romania. The circuit doesn't go to Romania, and so it's really cool to have other countries do well.
Barely tapping the bottom part of that paddle and opening up the gates for the men's competitor, Valentin Cretu, coming off of a 24th place finish in yesterday's men's singles championship.
This is the most exciting event to watch as well. I mean, just adding that pad at the end really just throw in a whole different concept to this, because what athletes will need to do, they have to start working on their reaction times. So as soon as that pad is hit at the bottom, even in the slightest bit, sometimes, they could miss most of the pad, but just as long as part of it is hit, the gate will then open for the next sled to go. And so it's not necessarily when the athlete is ready like other races. So athletes, they're there just getting charged, just waiting for that gate to open and then for them to pull, which can kind of be different for doubles as well, because there's 2 people pulling that sled instead of just 1.
No problem with the paddle for Valentin Cretu, as the team of Jutland and Serban now on course. 23rd was their finish in yesterday's doubles world championship, their first. So far this year, the Romanians have finished as high as 7th
Wow.
on the World Cup in team relay.
That was
Close to disaster.
Yes, I'm so impressed. They didn't even have to put their feet down. They kind of just gave it a good, nice drive. Broke out of that skid. It's a little Mario Kart, a little bit.
Yeah, pinball machine.
Yeah, wow.
So far this season on the World Cup, about one nation per relay race has missed the paddle and been disqualified. It'd be great to see a perfect record this week at the Worlds, the biggest event. It seems to be a pretty benign placement for that paddle, where you can regroup even if you hit that finish wall.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a science behind it. I mean, different countries will favor different ways of doing it. Some people will prefer to sit up and lunge for it. They think they can save time in doing that. Like right here. So that was a little more latent of a response. Sometimes athletes will kind of lay there and just stick their hand up, but then some, will really try and lean forward in getting that. So it's interesting to watch different countries and how they handle it. But wow, look that was incredible. I mean, you can't, even some of the best athletes in the world can't do that. So that
well done.
Yeah, job well done.
Team number 2 in today's relay competition, the Republic of Korea. And first off, Eileen Frisch, longtime competitor in the German junior program. In fact, like you, Kate, she's a junior world champion. But with the depth with that team and in this nation, she found a much more hospitable home in the Republic of Korea.
Yeah, and she was a junior world champion, not to mention on this track. So she knows this track very well. And with those German roots, I mean, she has the basics, the foundation of knowing how to drive, knowing sled control and body control to have exits just like that. I mean, that's her German heritage coming out and sliding right there. That was incredible. She handled that pressure really well. Because again, that drive coming off of S4 is a hard drive. I mean, they're not just laying there, just enjoying the ride. They're really controlling the sled.
Green is good, as we told you earlier in the women's competition. That means the team on the ice is in the lead. And Eileen Frisch probably having her best run of the weekend, sprint, women's, and relay. As long as she hits the paddle, and she does. Opening the gate for Nam Kyu Lim.
You'll notice another time in there called the change time. That's what we want to be looking for and how quick their reactions are. They just pulled a 2.22, so we'll hopefully start to see those reactions drop once we get into the other countries. I mean, it's like I mentioned before, it's something they train for. This was just recently made an event. Which Olympics was it? Was it
2014?
Sochi? Yes. Yep. And so beforehand, this was more of just like a race they kind of threw on for World Cup events. But now that it's an Olympic event, these athletes are taking this much more seriously.
They've competed at the World Championships with Team Relay since 2012, and before that they had a related event called the Team Event, which was just a cumulative time, but the 3 disciplines were run as separate races, nowhere near as exciting. And she has missed. He has rather missed the paddle. As I mentioned, that happens about once a race. And they've spread the wealth this year, Katie. The USA, Russia, Italy have all missed paddles, and now Korea suffers the same fate.
Yeah, it looks simple, but it's not. I mean, they're going 70, 75 miles an hour, and so that's a moment when it can be important to use both hands. Because, again, sitting up, you just nicked it.
But how tough is it to try and sit up when you're going those speeds, those G-forces? We're talking core muscles.
Yeah, it is hard to sit up, and so I think that's why some athletes really prefer, double hand, lunge forward, because you just don't want to miss that. Like, there's, if any mistake, I mean, it's hard enough just to get the sled down the track, and so you don't want to add more to your race day by missing it. But I mean, we've all been there. We've all missed the pad, so I don't blame him. I understand how he's feeling.
The dreaded DSQ for South Korea as Romania holds on to the lead. Looks like Sasha Bennick there getting ready for his run. The Germans will be last to go. Heavily favored in this event, as they have won all but one of the World Championship relay competitions in the 9 years it's been staged at the Worlds. Next up, we've got Ukraine. Olena Shtetskev, 25th place earlier today in the women's competition. And the track now clear for the Ukraine.
So this event really isn't much different for the women because they get a full start. It's really more of an adjustment for the men coming down. And so I believe they'll get one practice run at this height. And when you descend in starts and the speed's a little slower, it becomes a lot easier to process the curves. And so the men are also kind of a wild card too, because since they only get one practice run, sometimes, they're just not used to certain entrances and exits. And so it's really more of a different ballgame for the men.
It's been a relatively respectful season for Ukraine this year on the World Cup in team relay. They have a perfect record of finishing, and they've had 3 sixth-place results, and consequently they are in 6th in the World Cup point standings heading into the final race next week in Switzerland.
That's a good showing. Top 6. I mean, that's hard to do with all these competitive countries. And even just to finish, just like we saw with Korea, sometimes it can be hard just to get the sled down the track and to open the gate for the next.
Speaking of respectable finishes, yesterday a 20th for Anton Dukash was quite good for the Ukraine. Had a little bit of an adventure there at the start, settling on the sled.
Yeah, an adventure. I love that. Yeah, and that line, even though it kind of took more of a banana line, more roundabout, that will cost a lot of time. His change time was great. It was a 2.11, but with that kind of roundabout curve, it will cost him in the end, because 100th at the start can turn into a 10th at the bottom of the track.
Incredible, a factor of 10. Split time still nearly a half second up on Romania right now, with the doubles team still to come.
And the amount of work that these teams put in to get ready for these races, I mean, just the steel work alone. I don't know if spectators really appreciate the amount of energy that goes into the sled that they're riding on. These athletes will spend hours, 2 to 3 to 4 hours night before the races, sanding their steel. So they're manipulating their edge. They're trying to get just the right roll, the right feeling, and they'll start at a low grit, end up on a high grit, and so their steels will look like mirrors. So just the sled prep that goes into this is immense. These athletes know their sleds very well.
And so much of the decision making in that is weather dependent, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So they're watching the weather. So earlier this week it was cold. It snowed a lot, so it was hard ice. So what that means is they want sharper steels, which will give them more grip. But obviously as the weather's warmed up, it's a little bit different it's a different ballgame, because they've been training on certain ice and now they're racing on different ice. So it can really throw some curveballs.
Clean hit of the paddle, a time of 2:46.152 puts Ukraine into the early lead ahead of Romania. Coming up next, Slovakia, then Poland, and the USA.
That was a great, consistent show for Ukraine. See right there, the double-handed. It's a little more stable. You're not having to deal with the different forces, but right there, he handles it well. You can tell he really dug in on his feet to bring the sled right around. Overall, since it's a combined time, how much does it really play a difference? Maybe not as much if he was just in a singles race, but nonetheless, all in the green, great timing. Not much more you can ask for.
Moving along with our fourth team in today's team relay. Coming up now, Slovakia. Katarina Simanikova first off, representing women's singles. Katarina finished 31st earlier today in the World Championship race as she celebrates her 21st birthday here in Germany.
was a great consistent start for her. I mean, she just raced earlier, and so sometimes the turnaround to race twice in a day. I just mentioned the steel work that happens. They also do that same steel work in between runs to get their runners in top shape. And so sometimes racing multiple races in the day can be exhausting physically and mentally, but also those sleds still require a lot of care and attention.
Lower portion now. This is the area they call the lower labyrinth, and then the Fent corner, named in honor of recently retired International Luge Federation President Josef Fent. For 25 years, he served the sport at the head. Clean hit of the paddle, and the young Slovakian opens the gate for the veteran Slovakian, 39-year-old Josef Ninis.
Veteran he is, and he still is pretty competitive at this level. It's really impressive to watch. And the reason why athletes can stay this competitive late in age is because so much, oof, ouch, that is a hurt to the ego. He handled that well, but again, what I'm saying, the reason why athletes can race this late in life is because so much of it is mental, and they study these tracks and they become so familiar with these curves. So the life of a luge athlete can be long if they do so choose.
And Ninis, not generally error prone. He usually gives up some athletic ability on the course, but such a great driver. So that was an uncharacteristic mistake, and it has cost them. They're well in the red right now, Slovakia.
Right, and that's what I was mentioning earlier with the men. Because they don't race from the start, it might be easier speed-wise, but it's just not familiar. So they might not be as familiar with those pressures, the exits and entrances. So that's what makes this an exciting event. It makes it fun to watch because some things can get shaken up a little bit.
Slovakia has had 2 fifth-place finishes this season on World Cup action with the team relay. They finished 6th last year at the World Championships in Sochi.
And with doubles, it's kind of interesting. I'll get people asking me, how does doubles even work? And a little bit of Luge 101. So the top man, he sees everything. He does the small steers. He's able to see where they're going, and the bottom man really can only see peripherals, and he does the bigger steers. So they have to work together to find the right algorithm of steering for each curve. So it really is a team event, and no, they don't talk to each other on the run. So it requires a lot of synergy, you could say.
Sometimes they do speak at the start to coordinate the start of it, right? And a normal race, not a gate opening race.
Yeah, they'll talk at the start, just maybe like a little pick-me-up, like, hey, let's go, let's do this. But during the run, there is no talking, and so they really have to be in form with each other. Right there, sled broke out just a little bit, and that's what happens when you aren't used to sliding from that height with those different pressures. Handles it well, but it is a bummer. It's a bummer when that happens.
Ukraine continues to lead the way over Slovakia and Romania. This is the 7th time that this historic track in Bavaria has hosted the biggest event of the season, the World Championships. As we continue with the team relay, this is Team Poland and Klaudia Domorodska, the first to go. Earlier today, Klaudia finished 29th. Now they work up, Kate, from the singles to the doubles last, and you were just talking about some of the intricacies of the two-man event. It is now no longer two-man, because next year it will be the debut of women's doubles.
Which is really exciting for the sport. It's really progressive for the sport, because for so many years it's only been men, which technically, if I do remember correctly, it is an open class.
That's right, gender non-specific.
Yes, but women just aren't as competitive. Also, I remember being told that women's hips, oh no, that is painful. At least she's holding on to her sled.
So
maybe she'll be able to get back on.
No, she is not going to have the momentum. Maybe this is the finish curve right here, but you cannot paddle. That's a rule of the sport of luge. If you paddle after a certain point on the course, you get disqualified. So we have had one missed paddle. Now we have had a crash, and two of the first 5 teams have effectively been disqualified from this competition.
That's such a hard feeling too, because they're like, I just let my team down. We all got ready for this, and oh, her head. I hope her head's okay. Oh wow, that's really the sled in the air. Wow, that is drama. This is really painful. As interesting as it is to watch, this is not kind to the body, and it's that type of crash that can really ring your bell, as they like to say in football.
Well, as we saw, there were first aid attendants, and Federation official Fred Zimney was on hand as well to attend to the athlete to make sure she's okay. And of course, one of the hardest parts about this is not just the injury, but you don't want to let down your teammates. This becomes effectively a team sport.
Right, yeah, it does with this event. What's most important is that she's okay. Hopefully she's okay. But yeah, it adds a little bit of insult to injury when it is a team event and it's not just riding on you.
Team USA is led off by Summer Britcher, who earlier today finished 6th in the World Championship race. She'll be followed by Tucker West, and then the doubles team of Masger and Turdeman. This quartet last year earned bronze at the World Championships in Sochi.
I love to see them pumping themselves up. I love that in the sport of luge. Very familiar in bobsled and skeleton, not so much in luge. But the Americans are very good with those pep talks. I love to see it.
Britcher, a 2-time Olympian and former top 3 finisher in the World Cup overall standings. This is an abbreviated season for the North Americans, as they did not join the World Cup tour until after the new year.
Which is a major disadvantage, if I'm being completely honest. To have runs in that race mindset, it's really hard to make up, especially the year before the Olympics. I mean, a lot of the international athletes, those are race runs, testing their equipment, testing their sleds out. And so for the Americans to only have half a season, but to still be competitive with the women earlier today, 2 top 10 finishes, it's a big applauded moment for the Americans.
Pretty clean as the USA opens up a big lead right now on the rest of the field. Summer Britcher, pretty clean, right?
Yeah, this is a great run. A little bit of lateral pressure out of Echo, but truly, I mean, this is in real Britcher fashion. She is fast. Wow, almost a second ahead.
Tucker West, who's known for his quick reaction time, perhaps paid the price there because he had a little trouble on the settle.
Yeah, he missed that last paddle, and again, like I mentioned, it's a little bit of a wild card for the men. Not as familiar down there, and hopefully it didn't lose too much time for the Americans. They're still maintaining that lead, but Tucker's a great driver, and he should be able to maintain this speed going down the track.
Over 1 second right now, the advantage of the USA over Ukraine, with still 5 teams to come after the Americans.
That was a very well-driven chicane transition. You can tell he's confident. He's relaxed in his sled. Hopefully this pad transition does not. There you go.
No problem at all, as here come Chris Masger, Jason Turdeman, the final for the USA. And playing off what we talked about a moment ago, Katie, about the emergence next year of women's doubles, you got to wonder whether we're going to have a 4th discipline in this team relay.
Right. Yeah, as we were just talking about. Yeah, I'm really excited to see the women do well. I have gotten on a double sled before with Emily Sweeney, the other American athlete, and let me tell you, it is difficult. It is not an easy thing to do. It's really hard to, as a top man, when you go to steer with your shoulder, you're essentially pushing into the bottom man's shoulder, which then drives the sled. So the steering is a little delayed. They're top heavy, the lines are different, and it's just a big school bus of a sled to be driving. It's just the feeling is very different.
Well, a clean hit, 2.388 seconds, their advantage. So there's no question that the United States has a big lead over those who went before them. But really, the race now begins with the Americans, to be followed by Italy, Latvia, Austria, Russia, and Germany.
That was a strong showing by the Americans. Summer right here, very dialed. You can see at the end, she just put her head back. This is the issue for the Americans. He missed that split second of a paddle. Might not be that big of a deal. However, it does add up in the end, and he missed that moment to accelerate his sled, and that's the only time in the track where they can gain speed. And so I wouldn't be surprised if over time on Tucker's splits, he kind of was bleeding time. However, they kept it together. Those were clean runs, and they have a pretty good lead.
USA, all 3 sleds with the fastest time so far in the competition. The World Championship Team Relay continues from Konigssee, Germany, with the Italians on course. This is Andrea Fetter. Earlier this year, Andrea had the misfortune of missing the paddle at the opening relay race, and she also had a rough race earlier today in women's singles, ending up in 24th, a perennial top 10 finisher.
Yeah, she is a clean slider, and when you have a race like that earlier, it kind of makes this team event easier. You're almost like, I have nothing to lose. Let's just throw my head back and just go for it. So a lot of times we will see faster times for these individual athletes during this team event.
Now to the bottom portion of this track. She's trailing American Summer Britcher. We'll see by how much when she hits this paddle, if she hits the paddle. And she does. 34 hundredths is the deficiency for Dominic Fischnaller. Was a little surprised to see Dominic get the call after crashing yesterday, and his cousin Kevin had a 9th place finish.
Yeah, that can be surprising. A lot of times, because it's only one run for this relay event, it's not a matter of consistency. It's just a matter of who is fast, who is blazing fast and can give them an advantage. But sometimes that allows other athletes to sneak into this event, which is exciting when other athletes don't get exposed to do this.
And Dominic is most weekends pretty steady and reliable. Let's see if he cuts into this 38 hundredths deficiency he started with as he negotiates the final few curves.
Another factor that this race brings into it is you have to drive. Oh, that was close. Did you notice that?
I did notice that. And this is a fast starting team, Reeder and Rassner. They also weren't the top placing Italians yesterday, but Coach Armin Zugler has gone with them. A lot of drama late last season. The World Cup finale was here in Konigssee, and Italy, with a strong finish, ended up tying Russia. And those two teams tied for the World Cup overall. The only year, by the way, that Germany has not captured the points championship.
Wow, that is noteworthy. It's kind of interesting. I mean, this event really just brings a whole new aspect to the sport. I want to point out, you'll notice on this doubles team, they're wearing straps around their legs. The top man, he's actually strapped into the sled. So if ever there's a chance where a double sled will flip over, they actually can't escape the sled. They are stuck in there until they're unstrapped.
Hitting the paddle 600ths of a second behind the USA. So the Americans are guaranteed a top 5. And frankly, a bit of a disappointment for Italy, who has underperformed other than that World Cup overall last year. Italy has yet to capture any podium, any color at the World Championships.
I will say, though, it goes to speak, they were about 3/10 behind going into the doubles. And so though the doubles team of Reeder Raster
did all they could.
Yes, and it was close. There would have been one more curve. I mean, who knows? Left up to the luge gods to decide. But just with 600ths of a second, over 3 sleds. I mean, this sport really does get intense.
It's USA over Italy and Ukraine. 4 nations still to come. Action continuing at the 50th World Championships in Konigssee, Germany. The Latvians have 3 career World Championship medals in team relay. They also have 2 World Cup medals this season. Leading off for Latvia will be Kendia Aparioda, who had an 8th place finish in women's singles earlier today. And we were talking about this earlier, how the Latvian coaches are pretty vocal at the start.
Yes, I love it. Again, mentioning with the Americans too. Bob, very familiar bobsled. Start in bobsled and skeleton is very loud. It's very, it's exciting to be up there. But for luge in the past, it's been more of a quiet demeanor. People are focused. People are eyeing down the start. And so I love to see this transition of energy to kind of make, you know, the sport a little more spectator worthy, getting people up to the start, getting them excited to watch these athletes get started in the track.
And it doesn't affect the athlete one way or the other?
I mean, I guess it depends on the athlete too. I always love getting a little pump up there, but I guess it just depends on what that athlete likes. But it's interesting. You're starting from a dead stop into 8 seconds of one of the most explosive movements, right? So it's like your muscles are tense. It's fast twitch movement, and then all of a sudden you have to calm your breathing and get ready to drive the track. So it makes the sport really unique because there's not really a lot of situations, maybe with like biathlon, where your heart is just pounding and then you have to slow it down to relax to make it down the track.
The gate has opened, and now mid-course is Arturs Darznieks, who had a career-best fourth-place finish earlier this season on the World Cup. You know, I covered snowboarding at the last Olympics, Kate, and all of those athletes, of course, put their earbuds in and turn on the music during the run. Could you even imagine that in luge?
I know, just like, hey, 1 second, I need to put on my music. Yeah, it's totally different. Although sometimes in training, athletes will do that. Sometimes it helps keep sliding light if they're taking a lot of runs and they're just getting tired. But it's also so loud going down the track. You're really just focused on driving and feeling the sled and feeling the curves that you're not really paying attention to anything else.
This coming from Kate Hansen, who famously prepared for her Olympic race by listening and dancing to Beyonce. I had to get that in, Kate.
Thank you.
This is going to be a close race here. The doubles from Latvia, the Sheiks brothers, up against the Americans.
Yeah, this will be a close one. Only 800th to play with, and considering how the Italians made up a lot of time, maybe it goes to show that the American doubles team did not have quite the speed. They're closing the gap down to 300ths of a second.
And now in the green.
Into the green. This is what we watch. This is why we watch luge. It's coming down to the wire, thousandths of a second.
Wow, this could be a little interesting. They hit the wall but managed to recover in time to tap the finish paddle. Latvia moves into the lead. In fact, they moved one position away from the podium as the Sporting USA team had a good run, but it looks like they may not repeat as podium finishers at the World Championships.
Yeah, that got really close, and we'll see the splits at the end. The doubles teams really made up a lot of time, and that's really what it takes in this race. It just takes consistency. You don't need to be a hero. No one needs to be a hero in the team event. It's just got to be consistent, shiny side down, and just keep the sled going straight. And that's exactly what the Latvians did. And it turned up well for them. And that was exciting to watch it just turn into green right at the last second, the last few turns. Super exciting.
Arturs and Kendia watch, they celebrate, and now the Latvians have the lead. Final three still to come at the World Championships.
You see right there, up to 4/10 that the doubles made up.
Well, there's a look at David Gleicha on the right. The Olympic champion has won 2 podiums already this weekend at the World Championships in sprint and men's singles. He'll be next to go following this woman, Madeleine Egla, who earlier today had an uncharacteristic problem, knocking her effectively out of the race. She ended up in 15th place.
Yeah, not common for her, although she is still young. She still has a lot of runway, we could say, in the sport of luge. Pretty good exit out of S4, nothing too drastic happening. She's really got to be careful on not over-controlling the sled. That's really important in luge. The more you drive, the more you steer, the slower you're going to go. So there's that fine line, again, we mentioned earlier, of letting the sled run, do its thing, but then also keeping it in the right direction.
Nice run going. This is the run Madeleine certainly would have wanted earlier today, but she could still earn a podium for her nation as she opens up 1700s now on David Gleicha. So while we have a moment here, Kate, the team aspect, I kind of liken this to Davis Cup or Ryder Cup, where it's normally an individual sport, but now on this one day you have teammates. And does that make less pressure because of the camaraderie, or more pressure because you don't want to let down your countrymates?
You know, I just remember this event just being fun. Again, like you said, there's so many singles. I mean, it's such an individual sport that you're usually just focused on yourself. But these teammates, we have to remember, like, they all live together. They train together. They eat together pretty much year round. And so they're very close. And if they don't get along, then they got to figure it out quick, because they spend years like this on the national team. So I think it really brings an element of bringing the team even closer to be able to race like this. So it's a fun opportunity to be able to win medals together.
Now the gate has opened for the doubles team, the World Cup champions, Tomas Stoy and Lorenz Kola. They finished 6th yesterday, and given how they've performed the last couple of years, that was certainly a disappointment, not having a podium finish. So they'll look to open up this lead and maybe put pressure on the final two nations.
Yeah, they've really had a few breakout number of seasons. I feel like when the Austrians figured out their sled technology, things really just went on the up for them. Because again, each country has their own way of building the sled. You can't just go buy the sled at your corner, sports store. These things are handmade for each of these athletes, and Austria, I feel like, has really mastered that in the last few seasons.
Hitting the paddle a half second into the lead, sincere elation for the two singles competitors as they greet the doubles sled. Austria onto the podium after a 5th place finish last year at the World Championships. They make it into the top 3 for the 2nd time ever in World Championship team relay.
That is a big accomplishment for them. Any type of medal is lucky to have, especially in World Championships. But it was a job well done. I mean, all of them were just consistent, and that's the name of the game, especially with Stoy-Kohler at the end. They're quick, and they're fast, and all you got to do, make it down clean and hit the pad and hope for the best.
Austria out in front. The Russians and the Germans, the two strongest nations in the sport the last 2 years, still to come. Getting ready at the top. Final thoughts, final course visualization for Tatiana Ivanova. There in the middle, the newest world champion, Roman Repilov. The doubles will go last, but Ivanova, a 16-time World Cup winner, to start things off for the Russian Luge Federation. Austria has already earned the first podium spot.
This is a clutch moment for Russia, and this is when nerves can get high. I mean, this is a nerve-wracking sport to do. It's just so mental, and we'll see them. Tatiana was calm at the top, and a lot of times what they're thinking is they're not thinking. They're just keeping their mind clear. They're just trying to stay relaxed, because at that point, all the work has been done. You've already trained. You're ready to go. So it's just a matter of looking at the mountains, seeing how beautiful they are, and then just having fun.
Being in the proper zen, that's a great way to look at it. Russia, the only nation, by the way, other than Germany, to capture a world championship in team relay. They did that 2 years ago in Winterberg, Germany. The Germans were 3rd that day. Tatiana, you figure, would have had to open up a pretty good lead, and she doesn't. So a lot of pressure right now on Roman Repilov.
Right. I think we could have expected a little bit more of a gap, and that run looked clean. There was nothing too dramatic that happened, and that could go to speak for the ice. Could go to speak for her setup for the ice as well, but looks like Repilov is already in the green, and we could expect that. He's back-to-back world champion. He took that championship right out from Felix Locke's feet to make that his back-to-back. It was a clutch performance he had yesterday.
Really clean, and as we mentioned yesterday, it has not been a solid year for the defending world champion and World Cup champion. He will not repeat as World Cup champion. He does own the world title, and he has been as good as ever this week. He hits the paddle. Let's see this advantage. It is tight, and I might say advantage Austria at this point, Kate.
Yeah, it's really going to come down to this doubles team. They are one of the older teams on the circuit. They have a lot of experience, so I would expect them to be able to make this back up. They just switched into the red. However, anything's possible, and maybe this ice is slowing down. We can't say for sure, but if they're able to drive clean lines, they might be able to make it up, but it's not looking likely at this point.
Yeah, 2/10 is a tough deficiency for Denisov and Antonov. They're Olympic silver medal winners in the team relay 7 years ago, the home Olympics in Russia.
A little bit of an issue in chicane. You can kind of hear their feet just topping the ice. A little unsure, sliding defensively instead of sliding aggressively, and that will make a big difference, in the end.
They lose a lot of time, an incredible amount of time in that final sled doubles, as Russia is in 5th place. It's Austria and now Latvia guaranteed a podium as well. The United States sitting in 3rd. They will need help, and I mean a lot of help, from the Germans if they're to stay on the podium.
That was a nice, clean hit with the pad. Repelov, just textbook. I mean, it's incredible. That line is incredible. It's just even, it's flat. Issues for the double team right here. Again, sliding defensively. Feet are down, not really sure. And what they really need to do is just pin those shoulders back and drive out of that situation. But a little bit of a rough go for the Russians, but it opens up some placement for the other countries.
It's Austria, Latvia, and the United States, the top 3 at the moment, as the Americans make their way back into podium position, at least for the time being. Congratulations all around, but now the powerful Germans. 7 times they've staged the World Championship team relay. 6 of those times, Germany has come out on top. Add the Olympics, and they're 8 out of 9. Leading things off, fresh off of her first World Championship, Julia Tobitz. And as if the Germans aren't strong enough, Kate, these World Championships, of course, were originally scheduled for Canada before moving here to Germany.
Right, which would have really been a different situation. It kind of evens out the playing field once they get off German tracks. So it's a little bit unfortunate with the pandemic that they had to do most of the racing in Germany and Austria, but it still is interesting nonetheless. Right here, she's switching back between green and red. Not the best line in Kreisel. A lot of movement, a lot of looping. This is a little messy for her. However, she does make up a lot of time in the bottom of the track.
Julia, of course, has just found incredible speed all weekend long on the lower part of that track, just opening it up. I'm interested to see how big this advantage will be for Felix Locke. 0.4 of a second. Really, only Felix and the other 2 guys in doubles, Tony and Sasha, need to stay off the walls, and they'll have another world title.
Right, and that's pretty, I think this is very on brand for the Germans. Not necessarily the best run by by Taubitz. We saw that line in Kreisel. However, they've got some special juju on their side. Even when runs can be a little messy, they still pull great times.
Well, for Felix, it literally is home cooking, because he grew up about 1.5 miles away from the bottom of the track.
Right, he is the hometown hero. If anyone knows this track, it's him. And not to mention, his dad is the head coach of Germany. He was born to be a champion, whether he wanted to or not. And so this is his bread and butter for his career. This is what he does. Half
second now as we get ready for what should amount to be a victory ride for the doubles team of Tony Agert and Satya Bennigan. Yesterday they captured their 4th consecutive World Championship doubles title, and they're looking to give Germany its 12th medal, 5th gold of the weekend.
12th medal, 5th gold. All those stats. And, a little bit of an issue. Yeah, not that great going into Jena. This is a very messy run for the world champions. However, like I said, the Germans got this magic on their side. I wouldn't be surprised if the gap still widened.
Well, we'll see. They lost quite a bit between one split and the next, and they're looking a lot slower down here at the bottom. Germany to the finish in search of another world title, and they don't get it.
Oh, no way.
What a weekend for Austria.
Wow.
David Gleicher with his third podium, his first gold. Germany surprisingly in the last few turns. I mean, that sends shockwaves around the entire luge world, especially from Tony and Sasha.
Right, this is not characteristic for Germans, especially from the reigning world champions. This is a moment in time. This truly is so rare. We do not see the Germans mess up quite like this. Although I will say for the singles athletes, they had great runs. Right here, she is already anticipating the end of chicanes. Her head is nicely rolled to the right. He rode a little too long on the end of S4 right there, but managed it fine. He's not even looking to where he's going, but the demise was really with doubles. They ran into issues coming right here. They let it go just a little too long, steered too late, and at that point, you're recovering.
It just shows how one little mistake can magnify on the way down and cost you so much time.
Absolutely, absolutely. I for a second, I didn't think the Germans were fallible. I did not think it was possible, but we see that they are human, in fact, and big congrats to Austria. This is a great win on a World Champ weekend.
First all-time World Championship gold medal for Austria, who on balance, along with the Germans, have brought the deepest program, men's, women's, and doubles, onto the World Cup and World Championship scene this year. Final results, in a bit of a surprise, Austria takes it over Germany and Latvia. The United States 0.2 of a second out of the podium position. Italy and the Russian Luge Federation complete the top 6. Great showings for all of those teams that finished. Unfortunately, one crash and one disqualification to go along with all of the success.